good morning and welcome to a fairly sleepy Heathrow's Terminal 5, where today we'll be departing with British Airways over to Chicago, a decent length flight, and all the more it'll be good to check in with them in 2025 and see how they're doing in the economy cabin. Now just behind me is the check-in zones here at T5. As I said, it's quite nice and quiet, so let's go ahead, get checked in, we'll get on our way to Chicago. Now I must say I was pretty excited that morning to be travelling on the 787-10. Now you might be wondering why that's so significant, and it's simply because this particular aircraft type is the newest within BA's fleet, at least on the Dreamliner front, so therefore it carries the most up-to-date seats. So this was going to be my very first time in the most up-to-date economy cabin. Now in terms of the check-in, this was really straightforward. It's all self-service within the world of economy, and it wasn't long before I was past the check-in, through security and onto Heathrow's myriad of different shops and restaurants. Now when it comes to flying economy out of Heathrow, I actually think Terminal 5 is one of the best terminals to do it from. You've got a really good choice of restaurants right the way through, from quick and easy eats right the way through to sit down restaurants. My biggest tip, however, if you are departing B gates or C gates, is that the moment you get notified of your gate, to actually head out to that particular satellite. These satellites typically are an awful lot quieter than the main hustle and bustle of the A gates terminal. Anyway, that's all for now on Heathrow. Ultimately, you didn't click on today's video to check out a review of Heathrow, so therefore we're going to progress quickly on board through the premium economy cabin into the brand new economy cabin, so you can check that out. Now whilst you digest the views of BA's latest economy cabin, what I would say is that it's fairly decent. It's definitely not class leading, that's for sure, in terms of space, in terms of overall seat comfort, utility, a number of other bits, but actually by transatlantic standards it's really pretty good. I find the seats, although they look thin, actually to be nicely padded. The recline is okay, and you've got all of the features that you'd be well used to in a more modern day seat, including the adjustable headrest. Now, in terms of leg room, I'm 6 foot tall or 180 centimeters or so, and I fit in okay. If you are a little bit bigger, yes, it's going to be tight, but typically that's always the case, sadly, today in modern day economy. Thankfully, there was a multitude of different charging options, including an international plug socket adapter and also those USB ports you saw a moment ago on the foot of the entertainment screen. For now, we'll start taxiing and heading out to the runway. We'll pick up on so much more in the skies, I promise. So let's get skybound and on our way to Chicago. Well, it's a beautiful day as we finally took to those sunny West London skies bound for the States. As our first stop on the journey of all things in-flight review, we'll firstly check out the entertainment system. Now, in terms of the headphones, these have evolved very slightly over the years in economy. You now get a small pair of in-ear headphones. Now, in terms of the quality and finish of these, are there any better than the headsets that they've typically replaced? No. Are they any worse? No, not really. Unfortunately, in economy, it's not great. If you do have a little adapter, you're welcome to bring your own headphones. I would encourage people very much so to do that. Unfortunately, on this particular entertainment screen, I couldn't see any way of connecting your Bluetooth devices. That is an area that BA, I think, could really add. In terms of the high-life entertainment system, however, I always find plenty of content available on it. So on that front, I think they do really a very good job. These particular entertainment screens also on the latest Dreamliner were plenty big enough and nice and fast and responsive, and also very crisp, which is always good to see. The aircraft was also fully Wi-Fi enabled, and you can also access messaging now completely free of charge on board, so a big thumbs up to BA on that front. Now, in terms of the flight pass, this is getting a little bit punchy, I must say, at £18 for the entire flight, so I did indulge on that occasion. It was a working day, so it was helpful to stay up to speed with all of the emails, but overall perhaps a little bit pricey. One little feature of the Dreamliner, however, I do really enjoy is the ability to be able to shade the windows. Now, it's so common on transatlantic flights where the cabin crew come round and put all of the window shades down. If you want to have a little look out, you're absolutely blinded by the sheer amount of light that comes through. To be able to dim it slightly, I think is a really good feature. By then, the drinks were then starting to come around. I started with my custom gin and tonic, and as ever with British Airways, the crew were very generous with the alcohol portions. There was then also a Chardonnay that I ordered before the food was then brought around, and I was rather nicely set up, waiting for that lunch service. Now, talking of said lunch service, it was a choice between the chicken with gnocchi or a vegetable curry. Now, I do think the British Airways economy catering across the board is getting a lot better. The presentation of everything is pretty good. Now, of course, everything does still come in a tinfoil tray with regards to the main course, so it always is going to look a little bit dog's dinner, but actually, relatively speaking, really not too bad. Even down to the little starter thing, I thought was really very tasty. So let's get into the alcohol and the rest of it and see how it goes. Now, when it comes to economy class wines, generally speaking, my expectations are rock bottom. This one didn't totally surprise, but overall it wasn't too bad. And actually, when it comes to the food, be it the starter, the main course, or the dessert, I'd actually give it a fairly solid 8 or 9 out of 10, despite the fact that the dessert was served with a side of turbulence. Once the turbulence has subsided, I took the opportunity to head to the rear of the aircraft to check out the bathrooms. Now, nothing super special on this front, but these were kept clean throughout the duration of the flight and were fairly nice and modern. Upon then returning to the seat, gave me the opportunity to check out the blanket also in a little bit more detail, and these were actually pretty decent quality. On my tour around the cabin, it gave me the opportunity to check in with the crew in the rear galley, who are generally with BA always up for a decent conversation and a bit of a laugh, and very much up for topping passengers up with various different snacks and drinks. I must say, BA do a really good job of keeping their passengers watered and fed between the different meal services. Now, talking about meal services, it wasn't long before we then got the opportunity to check out BA's second service. Sadly, it was the return of the Monty's Bakehouse. I've had these a few times, I think they're getting a little bit better, and on this occasion it was again a choice between the chicken or the vegetable. So as we start to make our final descent into Chicago, what are my final thoughts with British Airways? Well, firstly, I'd love to encourage all of your thoughts down in the comments below based on everything that you've seen. What do you think? From my perspective, I thought they were decent. They're clearly not class leading. They're nowhere near the likes of Qatar Airways, Singapore Airlines, etc. But frankly, I just don't think that's where they're aiming. Overall, pretty good and an awful lot better with a couple of more horrendous transatlantic experiences with the likes of American Airlines. So if you are looking to fly transatlantic, I would indeed consider British Airways. If you are looking to spend a little bit more money, I would check out my recent review of Premium Economy just now in the bottom left. And otherwise, all that's left for me to say is to thank you so much for watching today's video. I'll see you in another one real soon.